All right, I want to go live here briefly for a little bit. There must be an issue with the YouTube app because it just started the live stream and it died, which is what happened a little earlier this morning. But I think we're good now. I think the image is coming back up. So we've got an owner operator. In fact, I've mentioned him a couple of times in a couple of videos. We'll let a few people get in here. Let's see, who is that? Actually, let me just jump on really quick while people are jumping in. Let me jump onto my channel so I can look at this on the laptop. It'd be easier that way. So bear with me just a moment. So I'm going to introduce him. He's going to be in on the live feed here in just a minute. He's shutting down at one of our facilities. There he is there. Greg Inman, and I'll post this video with the chat so everybody can see this. Greg Inman is an owner operator. Greg has been driving, I think he said since, was it 86 or 87, Greg? So he's been around this industry for quite a while. Greg has a master's degree in business, I believe, from the University of Denver. I've mentioned this before in a couple live feeds. For those that don't know, the University of Denver is actually a very highly touted business school. Greg has his own authority, runs for himself, but he's running for us, hauling our flowers for a little while. And Greg had saw my earlier video this morning, and he had sent me a text where he discusses, he runs a spot market, and so I'm going to give you guys a snapshot of someone that, in my opinion, runs their business incredibly well and tracks his numbers at a very detailed level. And I want to talk about why. Greg and I were just talking on the phone before this live feed, and I want to talk about why it's so important that you track numbers at a very low level. And as I always say, a story unfolds when you do that. In this case, the story unfolds. Let me switch this a little bit. Sorry, this is sliding. The story unfolds and kind of proves the point of, if you were just looking at numbers at a really high level, you would totally miss the revenue opportunity that exists for Greg. So Greg has been running the spot market, and let me just kind of run through the numbers early on in this video. So again, he's been running spot market, and now he's been running for us for a little while. Here's what his numbers are. His mileage is down 12.1%. So he comes and runs for us. His mileage has decreased 12.1%. That could be good or bad, right? Depending on all the rest of the numbers that are to come. His deadhead mileage has reduced 93.8%. He has reduced his deadhead when he runs for us because we pay all miles. So his deadhead has been reduced almost 94%. This is where things kind of get interesting. His rate per mile that he was running on the spot market is down almost 43%. I believe Greg had mentioned to me that you were getting about 285 or so on the spot market, if I'm not mistaken. So he comes here and he takes a 43% cut. That sounds devastating. His miles are down and his revenue's down, and it sounds devastating. His cost per mile, though, has been reduced 31%. This is where, when you take all of these numbers into account and you apply, and again, we are a little bit unique with how we pay and how we run our guys, but his gross profit is up 18.6%. That's nice. The real so what, as we all know, comes in the net profit. His net profit is up 12.7%. Let me read through those really quickly once more. His miles are down 12%. His deadhead has been reduced almost 94%. His rate per mile that he's being paid to run has reduced almost 43%. His cost per mile has been cut 31%. Gross profit up almost 19%. All net profit up almost 13%. When you talk to or you read all these posts that you see on Facebook and all these other places, or you listen to other people, and they tell you that revenue is all that matters, or that all that matters is you're just getting the most that you can from the broker, guys, that is so high level, way up here. And as I say, until you start looking at all the numbers and you begin to track everything, as Greg does, Greg is pretty similar to us and he tracks every single number. You would think that you would be better off running the spot market. Because here's the thing, we pay $1.85 a mile. Now, we also have a lot of other ancillary stuff that we pay, but just kind of factoring dollar per dollar, that's what a lot of guys look at. You think, why in the hell would I give up $2.85 a mile in the spot market to come run freight for $1.85 a mile? That's ridiculous. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. We had a driver who had his owner operator, what I would deem as a successful owner operator. He came in to haul some freight for us. He hauled just like 1 or 2 loads for us. And then in the middle of the night, he comes in, throws a fuel card on the desk and leaves, doesn't take the load, and says, I can do way better on the spot market. Maybe they can. But in this particular case, here's a guy that was averaging $2.85 a mile, all miles in the spot market. He takes a $1 per mile pay cut, but yet when you look at all the other factors, all the other numbers around what we do, and in this example, his net profit is up 13%. That's why I say track all your numbers and a story unfolds. And Greg, you're welcome to kind of chime in here on some of the comments if you want to discuss some of the other things. That's why you have to look at all the numbers. You can't just say I'm getting $3-4 a mile, and so why would I not do this? You have to look at everything. And I'm not just waving some flag for us. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you need to use us as a really good example, this scenario as a really good example as to why you shouldn't just automatically say, I'm not going to take $1.85 a mile freight. You need to understand all the components of that opportunity, of that run, and then compare it to what you're doing today or what you were doing the last several months. Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks, Greg. He's up 12.7% of 100% of his revenue. So really strong numbers. I mean, incredibly strong numbers. When you look at these opportunities, whether it's a direct customer, whether it's a lease company that you're looking to join, whether you have your own authority, you have to look at all the numbers. You have to get to really granular details and apply all of it. For those drivers that have the perception is that revenue is all that matters, this is why it's not. For guys that say, it's all about getting the most from every broker. Truck Driver Survival, this video is right up your alley, man. I don't know if you're just now joining, but if you are, I'll probably jump back in here and run through these numbers again. This is right up your alley though, man. So this is why you can't just look at opportunities and say, I'm going to go chase $3 a mile. This is why you have to look at the totality of the opportunity as it relates to the very specific details of your business. Because one thing that is difficult to do in this business, because there are so many different facets to transportation, to trucking, and what so many different guys do, even if they're just an owner operator. It's so vast, but it is absolutely critical that you know your numbers. And this is a perfect example. And I appreciate Greg so much for this. And as he just said right there, is the trifecta is his gross revenue per week. So when you read these other forums or you listen to other people talk about why it's not important to understand your costs, your rate per mile, your cost per mile, time, and all those things, you really need to dig really deep. It just is really, It's just really, really deep. And I think this is great for him to share this number because, again, Greg's not an employee for us. Greg has just been watching, I think, the channel for I don't know how long, a little while. He's kind of been a lurker, just lurking in the background. He has, again, he just sent this to me, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, those are some really interesting numbers. I think this would make for a great video." And then it was another good excuse to procrastinate from not doing all of this stuff. But am I buffering? I don't know. Anybody else buffering? Looks like it's pretty solid on my end. In any event, when you look at your cost per hour, you have to be really careful. There are times when you do need to apply your cost and your time associated with this, without a doubt. For us, we understand that's really important. We try to have loads where guys are almost dropping and hooking. And a lot of times that's the case. And sometimes we miss it. It might take an hour or so. But, when you're getting to a drop and hook environment, when deadhead is eliminated and a whole lot of things, that's when you need to start really assessing things differently, because deadhead does represent a pretty significant significant piece of this puzzle. Yeah, and as he's saying, he's up over 12% on the spot market. So Blake Wood says, if you're an owner operator and don't know your numbers, then you're a fool and you should keep your 2 cents out of big boy conversations. Blake, welcome to the channel. I couldn't agree more. Getting the numbers that an individual needs in trucking can be relatively daunting. Tracking those numbers, sorry, phone call. Tracking those numbers can seem, I think, really daunting for a lot of individuals. I think they just feel like there are so many numbers, there are so many things to track. And then I've said before, you can go to an accountant. Holy cow. That's what I get. You can go to an accountant, have them create a spreadsheet for you. And it is so simple that all you have to do is enter in a couple of numbers for every run. It takes probably less than 5 minutes. That spreadsheet will automatically calculate what your profitability is. Cost per mile, MBA, I saw a comment early in that first live video. You said cost per mile is a look back in time. And it is. The past is also a pretty good way to predict the future, but it's also a way to determine what your business is doing in profitability or not this year. It's also possibly the very best way to track how you want to price your loads. Now, I commented in some of these Facebook forums the other day, and they were like, and they assumed when I talk cost per mile, for some reason, everybody seems to, even guys that are really smart, I think that have some of these other forums where they have call-ins and things of that nature, they assume for some reason that when I say track your cost per mile and you got to price your runs, they for some reason seem to think that I'm stating that you operate off of a cost plus model. What I mean by cost plus model is if your cost is, let's just keep it simple, $1 per mile to run your truck, they assume that you should just apply whatever. You want to make 20% margin. So now you're only going to ask $1.20 for that run. Well, of course not. You always want to be negotiating to get the most rate that you can from a broker or a shipper, sort of thing. But knowing your cost help you determine really quickly, what you're going to profit. Is that going to be a good run? It helps you identify deadhead really quickly, whether or not it's worth it. It helps you identify if you're going to be wasting 6 hours to get loaded at a cold storage place, or 8 hours or 10 hours, hauling frozen chicken or pork or whatever it may be. You can really quickly assess how profitable this load could be and whether or not you want to take it, or whether or not maybe something else on the board is more attractive. It's just really critical. Let's see, I believe cost per mile, rate per mile is an index. Of sorts, sure, of sorts. The financial industry, some of the biggest, most important industries that we work off of, all work off of indexes, right? But at the end of the day, you have to know to the moment what your costs are, and they will fluctuate, right? Deadhead, tolls, fuel, you name it. There's a lot of variable costs that come into this that are going to impact and fluctuate for your business. That can go region to region, that can go timeline, you name it. QAL says, where are your golf trophies? Or are you a fake, not the real trucking exec? Let's see. Golf trophies are, I saw them the other day, right here. They're right here in that box right there. I'm not going to bring them out. I probably will have somebody come in and build some shelves. I'm not really sure I'm going to set this office up yet. So I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to bring them out. They may just stay in that box. They're all wrapped and tightly packed. Let's see here. Greg says the cost per mile is different from region to region. Sure. Again, if you're going to be weather, mountains, terrain, there's just a whole lot of things that will have an impact to your costs. And that's where I think a lot of guys take a look at, they do their taxes from last year, and they determine that their cost last year was whatever it was, right? $1.65 to run per mile. And so then they go ahead and just say, well, that's my cost per mile to run it. It's probably not going to fluctuate much this year. So I'll just keep it at $1.65. So dangerous to do that. Your costs can fluctuate significantly. Tell you right now, we see 20 to 30 different driver, on average a year. Those costs can fluctuate as much as 25, 30 cents per mile. And I'm just talking on an average. We have some that are pretty significant swings. A lot of that is driver behavior. So there's just a lot of factors that go into the numbers for this that you want to be able to track. Again, when you just look at an opportunity, all of us, myself included, your gut reaction is, this guy's making $2.85 a mile in the spot market. Why in the world would we come in and make $1.85, consistently? That makes no sense, right? It doesn't. When you just look at that number, and that's how so many people in this industry look at numbers. And it's a really poor way to run a business. I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I just mean that's not the best way for you that you can run your business. And I see a lot of I see a lot of the comments flying. I see a lot of numbers flying, and that's a really good thing. It shows me a lot of, and it's not, I guess I expect a lot of people to be discussing numbers on this channel. When you're out and you see these other individuals, help these guys try to understand who are looking for input. Help them understand, why some of this really, really matters. And I see Greg's, Alex Express, thanks for the $2, man. I'll buy a Dr. Pepper with that. And Greg says everything is indexed. If not, the numbers wouldn't be accurate, and that's correct. Jim says, shoot for the big number, swing for the fences, run to first while the broker and shortstop bobbles at midfield. Never give the pitcher an easy catch, no cheap freight. Yeah. And here's the thing, right? So I track cheap freight. So we use that example of running to Florida. In a best case scenario, yeah, you want to take that backhaul with you, right? You want to get such a good rate going in that you don't have to take that dollar a mile coming out. But in some cases, you are better off taking cheap freight versus deadheading 300 or 400 miles. Now, in today's environment, 2018, oftentimes you are better off to deadhead 200, 300, 400 miles to do that. Rates early in this year were still well above average. Freight volume was well above average. We saw some really crazy rates, right? That warrants deadheading. I'll give you a quick example. I was just talking with Greg about this. We had some loads that guys were filing out in Phoenix. We were deadheading down to Yuma or Nogales. So 250, 275 mile deadhead to get to these locations. But yet we were getting $3 a mile in some cases, upper 280s running all the way to the Northeast, right? Really strong numbers. Absolutely, I'll deadhead 300 miles all day, every day to be able to make that kind of rate per mile on that mileage. And so as I talked about that, I did a video here a while back where I talked about the $4 per mile might not be as great as it seems. The individual in that kind of spun that video was he had a $4.02 or 4 cent per mile rate, but it was only $40. Excuse me, 40 miles. And so when you look at the amount of time, he had mentioned, I think it took him like 7 or 8 hours to take that run. He'd taken it before. So that's probably not a really good run unless he's sort of at the end of his 70 and it's just a way for him to make another 150, 175 bucks at the very end of his 70 before he gets a reset. Sure, go ahead. One could almost argue you might be better off just to go ahead and get your 34 in versus spending an extra day on that 160 bucks. Big Yeti says he doesn't know his numbers, and I suspect that's a lie. Dashcam says, is current freight demand still driving up rates? Yes, it is. And it's probably going to be, April is that time where, the next inflection point happens and we're starting to see rates be really strong, as well as freight volume. Cost is different from person to person because most people factor in home. That could be the case, right? I have seen examples where individuals try to factor in home expenses. I think that's a really poor way to run your business because your home expenses aren't a part of your business. You want to separate those two, just like you don't want to commingle your business funds with your personal funds. The absolute worst thing you could do. So you want to keep things business. Your business needs to pay you enough in salary that you can take care of those home expenses. But I don't think you want to factor those into your business costs. It's my opinion. Yeah, and Greg says he doesn't use profit of revenue from other operations, right? Of course not. Let's see. Alex Express says he's talking to Kaz about surcharges and things of that nature. When running the Northeast, do the tolls get charged as an extra? No. Typically when you run the spot market, it's very rare that you get a fuel surcharge. Typically what you're working off of is just a flat rate, right? So you're going to move that freight from point A to point B. If point B happens to incur tolls, that's on you, right? Alex Express brings up another great point. I don't know who I was talking to the other day about this. I was talking about IFTA. Guys, IFTA is nothing more than a great way for you guys to look at it as a significant fuel discount. Every state has a different rate, a different discount, if you will. And so for guys that don't download the PDF to know what the IFTA rates are, you're giving away many thousands of dollars a year in where you fuel. There is so much technology available on phones and apps that you can look at. If you're in the Northeast and you're going whatever to the Southwest, you're going to make a couple of fuel stops along the way. Where you fuel, it's really easy to jump on your app, see what the price of fuel is at some of the truck stops in that area along that route. And then you just bring up your PDF and you compare the IFTA numbers, and you might very well find out that you're better off to change your fueling habits. And that's not complex. That's really simple. Again, just look at it as a fuel discount. It is a game, Hollywood. It is a game. It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Why are card counters not allowed to, known card counters that is, why are they not allowed to play in Vegas? Why do they get no action? They get no action because casinos don't want their action because they use numbers to their advantage to benefit themselves, right? So that's why nobody wants to give them action because they swing the odds into their favor. Casinos don't want that. They want your money, not odds in your favor. Yeah, and Greg, that's a good point, right? Greg owns his truck and that kind of stuff. So, but again, I mean, I think that speaks. Man, there's a gnat flying around somewhere. I think that speaks to. I think that speaks to the fact that that Greg runs a good business. Greg also spent a lot of money maintaining his truck, and by maintaining, what I mean is preventative maintenance, so that he doesn't experience downtime. Okay, so he spent a lot of money this past year, and that's a cost of doing business. But again, it affords him an opportunity to ensure that that truck is in the best condition possible to do exactly what he wants that truck to do, which is to make him money. John Shepherd said, "I appreciate the good thing." You're welcome, John. I didn't want to call you out specifically, but you've done a tremendous job. Kazan says, average person here, fuel is 35% of their cost. There are some at 43%. I don't understand how you let it get that high. I want 27% or lower. And Cass and I mentioned in that previous video, I'm always shocked when I pull into a truck stop and get gas. When I look over at the fuel islands and I see the trailers on that fifth fill spread all the way back. I see things hanging off of the trailers. I just see things that cost money. How they fuel, where they're fuel, all those sorts of things are tough. I mean, just like when you haul really heavy freight, when you haul a really heavy load and you go in at a half a tank so you can scale that load, there's a cost to that load, right? That load may pay just what's average on the board. But the thing you need to understand is when you go in for a really heavy load where you've only got half a tank or a little bit less, you are now forced to stop and get fuel and pay potentially significantly higher amounts because that load is predicating where you can and can't fuel. I don't know that a lot of guys look at that. I mean, when you're trying to price the amount that you're going to tell the broker that you will haul that load for, if it's really heavy, you need to consider where that load's going and how much increased fuel cost you're going to have. Again, because you've got to stop so frequently because it's so heavy. A lot of things I think maybe guys don't think about. Alex Express is a genius. He says hit the like button. Good morning, Bandana. TJ, welcome. Alex Express says he drives 55 miles per hour on heavy loads, 59 all else. A big savings, for sure. Yeah, I talked about this a while ago. I think it was on my first channel. Howard, who's our transportation manager, was used to drive for us. Still does take some loads from time to time, but primarily during flower season. He when he was driving for us, I've forgotten where that load picked. I know it picked down around McAllen, Texas, and it was a 3-stop. His first stop was Roberts, Louisiana. Then he was going over to Opelika and Brundage in Alabama. It took them a crazy amount of time. In fact, he ended up missing his appointment at Roberts because it took the shipper so long to load. So what he did is as he drove through West Texas and really low traffic areas, he was running that truck at like 53, 55 miles an hour. And a lot of guys are like, oh, that's dangerous and this and that, whatever else. Again, we're talking West Texas, no traffic, right? What he did was there's no sense in him hurrying up, running that truck at 65 to 70 miles an hour. So you can hurry up and then have to sit and idle the truck, that sort of thing. Now, again, one can argue timing of his hours and stuff like that, for sure. But there are times when letting off that right pedal is prudent, and it's the right call, and it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of money. Dashcam Sam, it says, what's the typical average of an annual gross revenue for a truck? Around 200,000 gross. Dashcam, I would say it's probably north of that, somewhere probably a little bit closer to 2.25. I think it also depends on where you run, how many miles you run, that sort of thing. I don't think in the past year, I think that number is probably creeping up to closer to 250. I know Will, Little Dog, has mentioned publicly that I think he turned 263,000 last year. And I think he would also tell you that, he wasn't prepared in January, February, maybe even a little bit early into March. He wasn't doing nearly as good of a job as he should have been because he was new to that owner-operator space. Again, rates are up, freights are up, so I think you're probably looking somewhere in that 240 to 260. And then you got Greg Inman, who just chimed in that he turned in 331 gross revenue in 2017. So there you go, right? There you go. Ox Express runs 160,000 miles a year. Holy cow. Just get a split axle problem solved. I wouldn't touch it if it's heavy because my costs go up. I lose 1 to 1.5 miles per gallon. Yeah, I mentioned this on a couple times on my first channel. I mentioned it, I think, once on this channel. I was talking about fuel mileage. It's about 4% for every 10,000 pounds of freight that you don't haul. So if you assume that a full trailer is 40,000, I know most scale more than that, but just to keep it in easy 10,000 pound increments, for every 10,000 pounds of freight that you don't have in that trailer, it's a savings of about 4% of your fuel cost. That's a big number. If you're hauling a 20,000 pound load, you're saving 8% of your fuel cost. That's a lot, especially as you add that up over the year. Oklahoma Dave says, looks like you've downsized your office. You're not going to have room. I know. Well, the office is it is smaller. It's more narrow. It's about the same length. It looks, I think, a lot shorter than it is here. That's probably 10 or 12 foot back there. I have another 10 or, I'm not so sure. I have probably 6 feet to that wall, to the window. So I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to position this just yet. But everything else is downsized. In any event. Big Face Trucker, welcome, man. How are you? We're just talking numbers. We've got an owner-operator that is running for us, and it's kind of been an interesting conversation. He was comparing the spot market where he was making $2.85 a mile. He comes in and runs for us. He's making $1.85 a mile, but we also have some other things that are impacting that $1.85 to make it actually much better than that. My point was in this video, a lot of guys miss that. They just would turn down the opportunity because they see $2.85 in the spot market. They see $1.85 here, when in fact, we kind of ran through his numbers. His net profit's up almost 13%. So we're just talking how important the numbers are. Jim says, keeping both tanks half full, 150 gallons tanks reduces overall weight by 1,041 pounds. The density is 6.943. For some reason, Jim, I thought it was closer to 7.2, but you might be right. Bottom line is I just use 7 as the round number, but yeah, that extra weight can matter. Big Face says, check your channel. TJ says, peace everybody. Heading to the trails in ATV. Hey man, be careful, have fun. Dashcam Sam says, I'm sure there are official nationwide stats by ATA or something. Checking Google now. Sure there are. I got all these messages coming up. So guys, bottom line is knowing your numbers and tracking them are really critical. And for those who are just kind of coming in late to this, I'll just mention this real quickly. As I started to with Big Face, we have an owner-operator that comes in, is hauling our freight. He was making $2.85 a mile in the spot market. He comes in hauling our freight at $1.85 per mile. Most people wouldn't do that. His numbers actually show that his mileage has been reduced 12%. His rate, again, $2.85 to $1.85 is down 43%. His cost per mile has been reduced by 30%, 31%. Although his gross profit's up almost 19%, his net profit's is up almost 13%. Again, numbers just really matter. You can't just, you can look at things at a really high level. You're going to miss the important stuff. You're going to miss the part where you get really profitable or not. And again, Greg turned a lot of money. Greg also stays out a lot, right? Greg is not a guy that spends a lot of time at home. Greg keeps the left door shut and he runs. He's in business to make money, and he's making a lot of it. And I think it's just a really good example for a lot of guys that want to get into this lease op space or the owner op space. Again, he's been driving since I think '86. There are good ways to do it, and there are just ways to do it. If you're going to do it right and do it right early. If you track your numbers, again, have an accountant. If you're not good at it with Excel, whatever, have an accountant help you, and get in that habit from right out of the gate of tracking your cost. Then once you understand your cost per mile, what you should be generating in revenue, as well as profit, then you can very easily begin to account for your time, sitting at receivers, shippers, those sorts of things. It can very easily help you determine if you want a deadhead, what revenue you're missing out, what your costs are going to be. It just makes things so simple and so easy. It literally becomes 2 + 2. It no longer is complex or complicated. And again, you can have people help you with your spreadsheets so cheaply, and it just makes things so simple and so easy. And I just felt like this was such a strong message. I really did. It is, Snore Lord, it is all about the profit, which is your net earnings. That's all that matters, right? That's what pays the bills. That's what keeps the lights on, keeps fuel in the tanks. That's all that matters. And again, for owner operators, lease operators, it helps you determine whether or not you want to be taking these shorter runs or the longer runs. And it just gives you that visibility at such a granular level. It makes operating a business really fun. There's the NAT. Greg Inman says perfectly, it's a plug and play spreadsheet, snapshot every load. For me, it's that instant gratification that I think we're all humans. We all like that instant gratification. I got to tell you, so Patricia runs our spreadsheet. She sends it to me every Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. It's in my inbox. Every Thursday morning, 6 a.m. It's in my inbox. And I got to tell you, I look forward to opening that spreadsheet. I want to know how we're doing. I want to look at every one of our drivers. I want to see how well they did, or so I hope. I want to look at how well we did as a company. I like that instant gratification. And every Tuesday and every Thursday, I'm excited to open that spreadsheet and say, how well did we do? How did our guys perform? Right? Are they making the money that they should be making? Are we making the money that we should be making? If we're not, having all that data, it's really easy for me to start looking at these numbers that I've input to go, man, what's going on? Because we track every broker, one click of the button on a spreadsheet, and I can tell which brokers pay us the most. And the same vein is true. The same is true. I can look at one click of the button. I can determine which brokers are paying me the least. I begin to influence my business in positive directions. Next Gen says he is going to take home that $500. So for those that don't know, I did a thing on Snapchat yesterday. So if you take a picture and you edit it, it's your picture. It's not one that you stole off the internet. I'll Google it and find out. It's easy to do. I got $500. I'll send to whoever takes the best, most creative picture. We have a couple good ones that are in as well. Kevin and Ollie is in the house. I got to meet Ollie. I got to meet Kevin too, but Kevin's not nearly as interesting as Ollie. Kevin and Ollie, they're hauling some flowers for us as well. Got to meet Ollie. He's awesome. Then he saw a squirrel, and then he took off. Ollie's a cool dog. Chuck Reynolds say, for a new owner operator who doesn't have the past numbers to go figure cost per mile, is there a formula to use to get an estimated cost per mile? Chuck, that's a really great question. Let me answer it by this way. Is there kind of a way to cheat and do that? I think the sort of the short and the long answer is the best thing to do, Chuck, is to pay an accountant $250. They'll give you a spreadsheet that is safe, that all you got to do is plug and play numbers. And once you have about a month and a half or 2 months worth of driving, you'll have enough miles under your belt so that your cost per mile is probably within, I'll say 10 to 15% of being pretty accurate. And then, every mile that you run before that is going to be basically your denominator. Again, I'm not going to make this more complicated than it needs to be. Basically, the more data you have, the more accurate your number becomes. But could anybody tell you just on a hunch what that could be? No, Chuck, because that number could be anywhere from $1.20 to $1.80 right now. And so that's way too big of a swing. Again, as I said earlier, trucking is so vastly different. How you drive versus how some of our drivers drive, region, area. There's just so many factors that we can't. It would be just far too misleading to say a number. And anybody that would tell you here's an average number, I would be really hesitant with that. Sahid says, what is ATBS? Say that the average owner-operator net is $40,000 to $50,000 per year. It seems like that is company driver pay. Any thoughts? Yes, I do have some thoughts on that. I believe that is probably an accurate number because if you look at that, I don't know if that data exists there. I've seen some other people that interact with a lot of owner-operators, coach them. Kevin Rutherford has spoke about this. I spoke to a lot of owner-operators. If you look at the turnover for lease operators, the failure rate is incredibly high. And I think the failure rate is incredibly high, largely because two reasons. One, they might not have, there are three reasons. One, they might not have a lot of experience in driving a truck. How you drive and manage that truck has a big impact on the number that you put in your back pocket. As Norlord said, that net revenue every year. The second piece is they might not have a pretty good business understanding, be it negotiating rates and all those sorts of things. And I think both of those things arise. I clearly left the sliding glass door open. Now there's a fly flying around. Both of those things are impacted because they don't track a lot of their numbers. They don't track their cost. And so I believe that number is probably not too far off, 40 to 50K, as far as what these guys make. Again, I just think it's because they don't track their numbers, right? They don't run the business like a business. And look, I'm going to say this as well. Greg factors. We talked about factoring in my previous live feed. Greg factors. He told me about 15% of his loads is all he factors. How many owner operators, for that matter, how many companies can afford the luxury of not having to factor and give up that 2-3% of revenue? Now, what Greg said is the reason. This is another interesting piece, right? If you just hear he only factors 15%, which means 85% he's not factoring. Well, why is he factoring 15%? What Greg has determined is whenever he brings on or hauls a load for a new carrier or a new broker or a new company that's new to him, there is risk. And so he will factor those new opportunities to ensure that they are creditworthy, that they pay on time, and those sorts of things. Once that business takes care of his business, then he'll afford them the luxury and he'll take a little bit less risk and he won't have to factor. Again, I think that's a really good way to look at it. He is assessing risk to his business of dealing with new companies or new brokers. I think that's a great thing, especially in today's market when freight is significant, new brokers are popping up. I think it's good to be really safe, right? Especially when if you're hauling a couple loads for them, it's a good thing. Greg Inman says, if you're a company driver, check the spot market on your current areas that you travel, track your fuel costs. And that's true. I mean, you can kind of get, again, you can get within that, I don't know, probably 25%, maybe a third, 33% guesstimate. Next Gen says you'll send more. He's got plenty on Instagram. Bandana, it could be a photo of anything. It can be a photo. I just, here's the whole premise behind this was, let's try to be better at cost of doing business, cost per mile running your business. For those that are creating content on YouTube, let's try to be better in that. That's one of the things I'm going to try to do is get away from so many live feeds, although they are interactive and they're valuable at times for stuff like this. I kind of get bored with it, so I enjoy more of the creativity side. Same thing for Instagram, primarily focused on photos, not videos. So take a great picture, get better at editing, get better at the art of photography, get better at running your business, that sort of thing. That was kind of the premise behind it. But understand that Kristen is going to be viewing these pictures as well, and she's going to be voting on it. So you might just use caution with what you're going to send in the picture of. That contest, if you will, started yesterday, 12 noon, ends 12 o'clock Pacific on Friday the 27th. We'll look at them on Saturday, and we'll kind of announce the winner. Caslin says, how are we going to charge lease guys for trucks? Will they be able to pick any truck, or you have certain trucks that you can lease, that they can lease? It's a good question. And I have, the answer is I've bounced around a lot with this, Caslin. I want to afford drivers the opportunity to get what they want. What I have found in talking with a lot of owner operators is, I feel like when they make a decision on a truck, are they really thinking through the true cost of doing business and the cost of that business? I gave an example this morning. I think someone asked a question. I mentioned if I were going to start as an owner operator or lease operator, what would I do? I would probably choose a Freightliner Coronado. I would get the nicest truck on the inside that I could at the cheapest cost possible. And by cost, I don't just mean price tag, I mean total operational cost. I'm going to look at everything, fuel mileage, you name it, the whole 9 yards. In fact, Greg, Em and I were talking before this live feed, and I mentioned we run Volvo 780s. We run Volvo 780s because I believe they are a really nice truck on the inside, and I use it for a quote unquote recruiting tool. Now, what I realize is plenty of guys prefer Kenworth, plenty of guys prefer other trucks. For us, that was what we thought was the nicest interior truck for our guys. But if I were going to go start as an owner operator, I would not spend the money at all for a 780 or an 860. I just wouldn't. I think it's far too cost prohibitive. The example I gave this morning, as I have looked at trucks, to answer your question more specifically, there's a really big swing, right? $30,000 to $50,000 by the time you're done with that 5-year payment of the 780 or the 860 versus something different. So I wouldn't do it. So now answering your question, am I going to allow guys to pick any truck? I don't think I am. I don't think I am. And here's why. So if somebody wants a really expensive truck, I want those guys to be successful. Any company that offers a lease is far more successful than when you as a driver fails, because you have now made the payments on that truck for 1, 2, 3 years, whatever it is. I get that truck back, along with your maintenance account is going to be used for all those things that we know: relocation, putting new tires, new windshield, cleaning, detailing, new mattress, so that we can put another driver in it. We're far more successful when you fail. But we're not doing this so guys fail. We're trying to do the opposite. And as I mentioned in my previous video, that's why it's really tough trying to create something that gives guys an opportunity to be successful. With today's rates, when what analysts are predicting for the next 2 or 3 years to be strong, I think guys can be more successful today. But I don't know that I want to be on the hook with a really expensive truck, because guys that want to come over here, I hope, are focused on trying to be really successful. And I think that potentially I may be hung and stuck with that truck. I don't know that other guys are going to want really expensive trucks. I think what you find, and I'll use Will as an example, and I'm sure there are plenty of others, I just happen to know Will personally. Guys get into a big truck payment, and it's a nice truck. The 780 is a great truck. Will liked it. A lot of guys like it. And you do that for a year or so, and you realize, man, I'm spending a lot of money, and I could be making a whole lot more money with something just as nice, uh, and I could be saving $8,000 to $10,000, $12,000 a year. So that I didn't really come out and say yes or no. My tendency right now is to say I'm probably not going to allow guys just to pick whatever they want, but I hope to have a really good offering. Yeah, bubbles are really comfy. Let me jump back up and answer a few questions. Let's see. Going into the future, do you think small 10 to 15 unit operations have a chance against mega carriers? Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me tell you why I think that. I believe that they do because they have the ability to do the most important thing in business is the ability to focus. And I think when you have a small operation, it allows you the ability to focus intently on what you need to do well and what you're doing poorly, and then turning around what you're doing poorly. I think small, and look, if you look at the history of transportation, small individual carriers and those small fleets, what I'll say under 30 trucks, have been successful. When they're not, it's because they're not taking advantage of what they should, which is focus. And so I think that's when anybody, big carrier, small carrier, single operator, right? When you're not focusing on the numbers and your profitability, I think that's when you can get into trouble. But I absolutely think that small, look, a 10 or 15 truck, you can go find a direct customer near you, and you can service that customer quite well with 10 to 15 trucks. You might not be 100% of their transportation solution, but I mean, if you are 5% or more, that's value to them. And so I absolutely believe that that small operations can. And I apologize. I didn't want to butcher your name, so I apologize. The Who, how are you, man? Def tanks are 5 gallon. I thought they were 10 gallons. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I know it was 10 on the RV, and I had the Cummins ISX, so I think they're 10 gallons. Next gen, I will check it. I'm kind of behind. Let me jump down and answer a few more questions. Snorlord says the more expensive the truck, the harder one has to work and the bigger the risk. Absolutely. And again, look, I'm not. Look, I'll use myself as an example. I can remember this as clear as day. I was laying in a bed in a house that I was renting in college. I was laying on the bed, my feet were up on the wall, and I was thinking about someday if I could go and buy a 7 or an 8 Series BMW, then that signified to me that I made it, right? And honestly, I can tell you, I was 29 years old. I got paid well over 6 figures just to sign my name to go to work for a company to turn them around. Was paid really well. So I went and I took that signing bonus, and I went and bought a 7 Series with a sports package. And that car was really, really nice. I'm not a big car guy, right? I'm just not. But that was important for me because I felt like, man, I was 29, I was executive for a public company, blah, blah, blah. And and again, love the car, great car. But as I looked at what that car cost me and what I really got out of it, man, it was such a waste of money. Which is why ever since then, I've just had trucks. I'm kind of a truck guy. I like to hunt and fish, and not to mention the tires on that thing. The tires, even if I tried to baby the tires, the most I would get is 12,000 miles out of a set of those tires. Average was like 10,000 miles. It's $1,600 for a set of those tires. So it was such a waste of money as I look back at it. And it didn't do a single thing but feed my ego is all it did. And really what I learned was what I thought was the right thing to do at 18 or 21, 22 years old, 7, 8, 9 years later, it was foolish. It was just a foolish way to spend money. And I still, every now and then, I think, man, if I just invest that money, what would it be worth today? And then I don't even want to think about it anymore. I think a lot of guys get into that same philosophy is you feel like you will have made it if you can become an owner operator and you can get a long-nosed Pete, or you can get this, or you can get that. If it's the right thing to do for your business, it's a business, right? It's a business. If you want to go spend your money on toys, spend them on, things that you enjoy. I'm not a driver, so I really don't have a lot of room to speak on that, other than to say it's a business, and make sure that you're profitable. You guys spend way too much. I've said this a lot. You guys spend way too much time away from family, on the road, missing events. Don't, is it worth missing birthdays or anniversaries or events or things because of the truck? I don't know. Again, I'll use Will as an example. Will went to the dream truck, the truck that he wanted. He wanted a W9 with an 86-inch sleeper. And he ran hard this year, saved money, ran his numbers, and determined he could cut his, I'm not going to give his number, but I'm telling you guys, the amount of money that he is saving is really significant. We ran through his numbers at a high, well, no, not at a high level. We ran through some of his costs last night, and the cost savings are really significant. Now, again, he's in a 13-year-old truck. He assumes and he knows that maintenance costs are going to be higher, but he's already factoring that in. So, yes, Caslin, there will be a down payment. I am a big fan of skin in the game. If you're on a free roll, look, I'll tell you right now, when I sit down at the poker table, if I win a couple of big hands early, God help you, because I'm going to play a lot more aggressive. And I'm going to play a lot more loose. And sometimes that bites me and sometimes it's good. But I like having skin in the game. And I want guys to have skin in the game. Jay Cannell. I just missed a good comment there, I think. QAL says, I've been told to get a W9 because you get better resale, but will reduce the fuel mileage. You end up paying for the fuel. Yeah, and again, I think that gets back to QAL. Where are you going to run? Where do you live? What's the freight? How much do you have to deadhead? Some of these older trucks are really good investments. They really are. The one thing that we all, whether it's a company or an owner-operator, the one thing that we all face that none of us are control, that none of us can control, is luck. Whether it was Matt Iso, the little guy trucker in his brand new 780 that couldn't stay out of the shop. I mean, that's just bad luck, right? Really bad luck. And that is a very public, glaring example of what bad thing happens when you go into a business and you're underfunded. Again, I'm not trying to knock on Matt. That is the death of any business, is being underfunded. I'll give you guys another quick example. I had an individual come to me a couple of years ago wanting me to invest in their business. And it was not a business that I was familiar with. I don't like investing in that kind of stuff, things I don't know about. Because if something goes bad, I want to be able to step in and operate that business if I have to, depending on the size of the investment. So, but here's the thing. The guy, when I politely said no to this individual, they then asked for half of the amount. Now that really, and this was a friend, that really frustrated me. And let me tell you why. So then I asked the individual this question, because previously I knew I wasn't going to invest in it. I just tried to be polite about it. When they asked for half the money, I then asked this question: how much do you need in total to fully fund this? Let's just call it a solution, right? This product or whatever it was. Okay. I don't want to go into great detail here. The individual told me that it was going to be about 3 or 4 times the original amount that he had asked for. And it wasn't a small amount. That our friendship is not the same going forward, but I'll tell you why. You never want to invest, whether it's $1 or $500,000 or whatever it is, into a business or an opportunity if it is not fully funded. Because what happens when you burn through, I talked about this previously, burn rate, what happens when you burn through that $500,000? you're still $1.5 million away from completion. You're just throwing that money down the drain. And so I think being fully funded, having a maintenance fund in place for if bad things happen is really, really important. And I think the world of SoCal, I believe his channel he's got some tremendous great information. About the only place where I see that I disagree with SoCal is, and I think this is probably a driver, a different perspective that he has, which is, and I think the message he's trying to convey is you can get into business for yourself and you can do it with $5,000. And I agree that you can. I just don't know that that's what I would do. I don't recommend it because of the situations like Matt Iso. And I think SoCal would agree with that. Look, more is always better, especially when you're talking about cash, especially in this business. Greg Miniman, yeah, Greg, you say it perfectly there. A lower truck payment is a safety net, and that's exactly right. Truck Driver Survival says he's back. I'll have to watch this after it renders. Greg also says if you're not good at mitigating cost, you better be an expert at development of safety nets. I said this a few videos ago. When you are in an industry like ours, which has relatively small margins, the best way to improve your profit is by reducing your cost. I'll say that again. The best way to increase profit is by reducing cost. And that is very true, especially in small margin industries of which we reside. Even though margins are really good now, as a whole, when you look at the totality of your business for 10 or 20, or if you're going 35, 40 years like Inman, best way to do that is to reduce cost. Snorlord says he went from a mega carrier to a small carrier and his profit margin is higher. Caslin says, am I going to hire from anywhere? Anywhere sounds like a really big, scary place. I'm going to be vague and say possibly. Harding says def is 20 gallons. So it sounds like it varies. You do have to prepare for the worst. Absolutely right. Let's see, especially when a small fleet has good delivery numbers, on-time record, you can charge more. Yeah, that's a great thing. I mentioned this in another video, Jim. If you guys are into this space, understand that most brokers track your performance, right? Did you do a good job? Were you professional? Did you show up on time, deliver on time, those kinds of things? They also track the rates that they pay you guys. Don't miss that. So when you negotiate for the rate on a load, think that you're not just negotiating on this rate for this load, you're also going to be setting the standard for the loads that you may be hauling for that broker in the future. So consider that. But yes, and that's to the other gentleman's name, who's, I apologize, I couldn't pronounce. That's why I think small carriers, they can do a really good job. The customer service can be significantly higher. You bet. I produced a video here titled Relationships Don't Matter. So many guys took that message out of context. They didn't hear the whole message. What I said in the message of that video in 10 seconds or less is relationships only matter if there was a return on your investment. I don't remember who it was. Somebody mentioned, you don't have to improve relationships by taking a lower cost. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Most in this industry perceive building a relationship comes at a cost. And I'm going to give you a good deal on this, but I want you to give me a good deal next time. Problem is, next time rarely happens, and I just feel like you don't get made whole down the road. You got to take care of your business right now. And unless you know for a fact that that is a customer that is going to take care of you, I just think you need to be really cautious about that. But smaller fleets, owner operators, those kinds of things have the opportunity to provide really good service. Yes, no Lord. He says, find the balance between bling and pride in the ride. Absolutely. Yeah. Jay Cannell says he's got to pay. You're going to have to pay a lot. You have to pay a whole lot. So the contract is almost done. I'll probably be announcing this sometime in the next few weeks, something like that. I'm gonna look, guys. I'm gonna start really small. What I've learned in business is to be that frequent follower, and by that I mean if you have the newest, greatest whiz bang thing that's in the market, iPhone or whatever. I'll use iPhones or any phone as an example, piece of technology. People stand in line for hours to buy it. I'd rather be the guy that buys it 3 or 4 months later, let some of the bugs get worked out. We're going to start really small. It's not like I'm going to announce this and we're going to bring in 15 guys. We're not. We're probably going to bring in 4 or 5 guys. We're going to operate like that for 6 months or so. The reason is we're going to make some mistakes. I want to mitigate that mistakes for us as well as the drivers, and then we'll start expanding that rather significantly. How much does the 99 weigh? How much does it affect? I don't know, Benjamin. You'd have to ask the guys that run that. I don't even know if Will doesn't even know. I don't think yet. I don't think he's even scaled it. So I don't know. Evan says, Evan, I saw your question. I'll do a video on that. He'd ask, he wants to grow to somewhere under 20 trucks. Absolutely, it's doable, right? But again, if you have 1 truck right now, it's always easier to get your arms around something that's smaller than it is, trying to track 20 trucks. I can tell you a personal example. When we started tracking our cost per mile, the people I had working on it, they just weren't doing the job that I needed. And by the time we really got our hands around it, 6 or 8 months had gone by. When you're running multiple trucks for 6 or 8 months and you're trying to pull in a whole amount of data, it becomes even more challenging and more expensive to try to now create what should have been done right out of the gate. So get with your attorney right now, create your cost structure, identify it, begin working on it on 1 truck. Then you can better deploy and be far more successful if you want to grow to 10 or 20 trucks. Having 6 months of salary in your back pocket is always I've heard that since I was young, right? That's always, I think, a pretty good number to use. Gosh, this is over an hour. Burn rate is what Tesla's doing, but when you look at the burn rate of Facebook and Twitter and Amazon, the last 3 have turned it around. Yeah, absolutely. But I think those, again, right, you have to look at those. You look, Warren Buffett steered very clear back in the late 90s of all things like Yahoo and whatever, because in his mind, he was a very big blue chip investor, right? Coca-Cola was a product that he enjoyed. He understood that, and he was willing to invest in it when the time was right. Same thing for Walmart and a whole lot of other things. So I think burn rate and some of those things are hard to get their heads around. What is the cost of operation for turning up a website? It can be not that great. It's not that significant. The more you put into it, there's got to be a return on that investment. Again, things are just very different in our generation or our lifetime. So it's kind of crazy. Man, this deer, somebody asked me, he's a 9-pointer. So I can't tell you that apparently moving a deer head is, that caused a whole host of concern for the movers. So I ended up just driving up so that I could bring Gracie, Kristen's lab down here, and that. Anyways. Great customer service and is building relationships, not giving them money. Absolutely, well said. Joe Cannell, why do I have to pay more? You are a great guy, but this is business, and you know that. And I know you're being rhetorical with that. Scott, spot market options on lease. Spot market options on lease. I'm not sure what you're asking. I said you'll be the guinea pig. Hey, oh man, you'll be the guinea pig. That's funny. TDS says he's interested. Kazan says load boards, so spot market should be an issue. Spot market options on lease. I'm not sure what you're asking, Alex. I apologize. I wonder how well a Coronado would navigate in a Walmart parking lot. Probably as good as I did on that bike in the greenhouse. I think it'll do just fine. That's right. He's going to eat elephants one bite at a time. That's how you accomplish it. Jim asks, when the chickens come home to roost, Riggs stuck in the shop for a common problem. It does get really expensive. That's one of the things that blow my mind. Look, on the RVs that I had, it was a big parent company, but they only were producing a couple hundred a year of the buses. And so anytime there was an issue, it was very common across the board for a large percentage of the buses to have the same issue, and it was, I mean, it was a common problem that they were able to fix relatively quickly and easily. I'm almost perplexed with when there's so many trucks on the road. There's more data, there's more input. Why they can't identify and solve some of the more common problems sooner? TDS, I appreciate it, but it just is so hard, I think, for people to make it through some of this stuff. Let's see, Canal, come on, I don't have to face when we're talking face to face. What's the over-under on Will tearing off a bumper or a fender? He's calling 4 months. I don't know. I know we were talking about the other night, we're kind of kidding. I think he was saying that obviously the nose is longer and where the front tire is positioned is different than the Volvo. So I think he's practicing the get out and look a little more often. I assure you, especially being a YouTuber, he does not want that to happen. Yeah, that's true, Charlie. What was that? 2 years ago, we had a guy with a 120-inch sleeper doing deliveries. That's right. Joe Harding asked the better question. What is the over-under that he'll actually produce the video if he does, in fact, damage a bumper? That's funny. Alex says, is our lease going to be dispatch, or can we pick freight from spot market or load boards or from anyone? Okay, now I understand what you're asking. The answer is yes. So we'll have dispatch services for guys that choose to do it if they want. If you want to go spot market, outside, whatever, you have a customer. Look, here's the thing. If you go and you find whatever, you live in Kansas City, pick any place, wherever you live, you find a direct customer that you're able to get more money on that run coming out of the gate, that benefits you, and it's going to benefit me as I'm getting a percentage of that. So it's great, right? So I want to encourage guys to be successful in that. Not that we're going to have problems if they're slow to pay or things of that nature. Then we might have an issue. We can talk about that. But again, we want drivers to be successful, and I think that's accomplished by us offering some dispatch stuff and that kind of sort of thing. Here is the quid pro quo: is that we will require guys to run some flowers for probably a month or so out of the year, something like that, or a season, whatever. But again, I mean, go back and watch the very beginning of this video, probably 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in. You'll see where Greg Inman is doing incredibly well here versus the spot market, and where he was averaging $285 a mile. You cannot cut a deal with a kidney stone. That's exactly right, Rule. I caught so much grief on that video about Job. So many people thought I was just really like legitimately banging on him, and they didn't know I was just giving him a hard time. Oh, shots fired. Cannell says he likes to think of Will as a toddler driving a big boy toy. I don't know if Will's in here, but if he is, I'm sure he's just about to chime in. Alex said load boards from anywhere. Yeah, I mean, we use DAT. We pull our stuff off of DAT and truck stops. There are a whole host of other load boards. I mean, yeah, you can look at CH or TQL and those sorts of things as well. But I think by far the majority of the freight is pushed out on DAT and truck stops. Load board 1, 2, 3, it has a lot of the same loads. It's pretty minimal. He should mount a backup camera on the front bumper. Alex, we're not going to take a cut. It's going to be flat. Well, here's the thing. So I have done the load boarding thing, right? I did that for the first year or so, and I do it sporadically throughout the year as well. I'm going to tell you guys this: the load boarding thing. In my opinion, I'm not saying that you guys can't find a load on your own. That's not what I'm saying. I know you can, I'm just saying that having someone that is solely focused on the load board and what's happening, posting your truck, taking calls, making calls on your behalf, I want that. And so we're not going to charge more for that. It's just going to be incorporated into it. So if you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you do, great. But it's just going to be part of the price, so that we won't take an additional cut for that, if that makes sense. Kevin's running flowers. He would like to second that flowers are in fact profitable. Well, that's good to hear, man. Because I don't want Ollie to run out of dog food. Why don't you, if it's so profitable, why don't you go buy him a couple of treats, Kevin? He would appreciate that. The rule says, although if you upset him, he will email you pictures when you're sleeping. Yeah, Daniel, we probably won't be hauling much TQL. I'm not a particularly big fan of them. Their reputation precedes them. They've earned that reputation, in my opinion. We've dealt with them not only as a carrier, but we've also dealt with them as a broker, meaning we used to use them to move some of our loads. I think very little of TQL. I'm sure that there are probably a handful of good brokers somewhere in there. I just haven't found them. Joe Harding says, by the way, I'm going to leave next week because I need to focus on winning an Instagram contest. Benjamin Duke says, Direct normally wants a number of trucks to their freight. It was an issue that came up with carrier I'm leased to, or don't want to agree on working together. Wants a number of trucks to haul their freight. Is that what you're saying? That's probably right. And that's the same thing for us, right? For me, it's a quid pro quo. But I also think that, again, guys are going to benefit from doing it. And again, that's why I use this example in this video. We had a driver that tossed his fuel card on the desk and walked out. He said, I can go make a lot more on the spot market. And again, you've got to look at your numbers. You have to look at all the numbers as it relates to the opportunity that's in front of you, be it flowers for us or any other opportunity. There was an artist called Boxcar Willie. The exec is more like Box Truck Scott. You do have an issue pretty often with that. Oh, look, Will just went live. Will just went live. That's sad. I was hoping that what's his face could get a couple of cheap shots in. Why don't everybody jump over to Will and tell him that trucking exec, send him over. We can go find out. I know he got his truck tags. He was having some issues with some other paperwork. And we can wrap this up. It's way too long anyways. Last couple of questions. Let's see. Yeah, hit the like button, share it out. You bet. This is probably, I don't ask for that. If you guys aren't subscribed, hit subscribe. I think this is probably a worthy video to share out. So if you guys want to share it out, I think it's a good one to do that. I don't think I've said that in probably a year. You bet. This channel's more. Yeah, exactly. Cool. If you guys, look, I'll stick around for another minute or two. If anybody has any other questions on this kind of topic, I'll try to address them. If not, we can wrap it up. Actually, this is crazy long. I'm going through and deleting a lot of the live feeds on the channel. I'm not particularly happy with a lot of the content on this channel. Over the next month or so, we're going to be changing directions a little bit. More edited videos that's a little bit more creative and fun for me to create. So look for some of that. Do you really drink Jim Beam? I don't drink Jim Beam. I do drink Pendleton. In fact, I found a Jim Beam. I found a Pendleton cork as I was unpacking. That's what I know. All right, let's bail. Everybody, let's go over to Will's channel, make fun of him. Do what he always does to other people, which is hashtag trucking exec sent me. Let's get out of here. You guys, as always, be safe. You guys are making miles. Take care. Truck is a boo. That's funny. Go give a little dog a hard time. Shane, thetruckingexec@gmail.com. I'll put it in really quick. You can copy this really quick. Make sure I didn't misspell that. There you go. Talk video, we're out. We're wrapping up. Crazy long video. I would just say, man, if this is interesting relative to numbers and what have you, check it out. Crazy long. We're going to wrap it up. 80 minutes. Silly. I need a job. Truckista, there's my email. Come on over. You guys stay safe. We're out of here. Take care.